Hello, I'm Grant Slayton, and I have a story to tell. I joined the Marine Corps March 8, 1963. I was 4 years in the Marine Corps. I was everywhere you could be in the Marine Corps in them 4 years. And exactly 2 years to the date that I joined, when I joined March 8, 1963, and March 8, 1965, I'm landing in Vietnam, an expeditionary force, the first infantry to land in Vietnam, 3rd Battalion, 9th Marines. And I joined the Marine Corps, and the reason I joined the Marine Corps is I had this girlfriend from Lucedale, Mississippi, and I was going to LSU, and I was about 19, 18, 19. And I asked her mother if I could marry her, and to my surprise, she said yes. And so we went to my uncle, the Baptist preacher there in Lucedale, who I was staying with at the time. When I'd go to LSU, then I'd come on the weekends to see Linda. And he said, Grant, he said, I'm not going to marry you. He said, you're going to LSU, you're getting married, you're going to have to get a job. And I said, wow, I kind of woke up and thought about that. So guess what my job was? My aunt the next day brought me to Mobile. Up on the 3rd floor of St. Francis Street was the Marine Corps recruiting office. And the sergeant was sitting there, and I walked up there three flights and walked in there. And he said, how can I help you? I said, I want to join the Marine Corps. He said, well, why do you want to join the Marine Corps? In other words, they're very interested in why, because some people think if you join the Marine Corps, you're crazy. But anyway, I said my daddy was in the Marine Corps. He was in the Pacific. And when I said that, boy, his antennas went up. He was ready for that. And he said, yes, indeed. He said, how about we send you to Montgomery and you take a physical in about 10 days. And then if you pass that physical, we're going to swear you in the Marine Corps. And sure enough, they gave me a bus ticket from Mobile to Montgomery. I went to Montgomery. We was the whole day in Montgomery, me and a whole bunch of other men trying to pass the physical, and I passed, and they gave me some officer that came there and wanted all of us to raise our hand and swear to the Constitution, which we did. And they gave us 3 tickets. They gave us a ticket to an Italian restaurant in Montgomery, where we went and got spaghetti, me and my buddy. Then they gave us the ticket across the street where there was a theater. We got to go over there and watch a movie. Then they gave us a ticket for the Greyhound bus drive from Montgomery to Beaufort, South Carolina, which is where Parris Island is. And we're thinking, wow, the Marine Corps is paying for all this stuff. Wow, we didn't know we was going to get all this stuff. So anyway, we went and had that spaghetti meatballs. We went across the street, watched that movie. About that time, it was about 8:30 at night, just getting dark. We got aboard that bus, and we arrived at Beaufort, South Carolina at about 1:30 in the morning. And we found out later that the Marine Corps does this on purpose. Marine Corps, Parris Island is an island, and there's a bridge that goes out there to the island, and they don't want you to know how you got on that island. Because within 2 or 3 days, you're going to want to get off of that island. That's how bad it is. I mean, the Marine Corps boot camp, when we finally got aboard that bus that went across that bridge, and we went to the, Marine Corps receiving, where they received these new recruits in our civilian clothes, we didn't think they was going to be there waiting for us. We thought, well, we're getting here in the middle of the night. We can't make a lot of noise. We don't want to wake nobody up. That bus pulled up in receiving, and they had 2 drill instructors with a Smokey Bear hat, cocked down just a little. And they boarded that bus, and they started screaming at us. They started cursing us. They started telling us they were going to be our mama and our papa, and that we were to get off of that bus right now and put your feet in them little feet prints out there right now. And I'm going to tell you, we woke up. We could not believe that they were there waiting for us. Sure enough, the next day, we got to go to bed that night for about 2 or 3 hours. But the next day, it was finding out, measuring you for all the uniforms. Took about 1 minute to cut all our hair off. Next, there's another Marine. Zip, zip, zip. zip, zip. All these beautiful locks are just falling off of you. And you feel humiliated, really. But anyway, they still screaming at you. Finally, they send you to the mess hall. You get a good meal, and boot camp starts. And I'll just tell you, it was 12 weeks, and we had 4 drill instructors because before the war in Vietnam, there was more drill instructors, and you only had to go 8 weeks at boot camp before, when the war started. But before the war, you had to go 12 weeks. They taught us everything about the Marine Corps. The language, we and the Navy have the same exact language, and you got to be in the Marine Corps to know what the language is. The floor is not the floor, it's the deck. The wall is not the wall, it's the bulkhead. The bathroom is not the bathroom, it's the head. You got to learn all that. You got to learn about your M14 rifle. You got to learn how to put it together or take it down in pitch black dark. You got to go out to the rifle range and qualify with the rifle. There's 12 weeks of nothing but hard learning. Then we got transferred to ITR, Infantry Training Regiment at Camp Geiger. We got there and we started immediately infantry training. We fired every weapon the Marine Corps had. We went through all the marching in the Marine Corps. We went through sleeping on the ground every day for 30 days under little pup tents, even when it's pouring down raining. Anyway, that was kind of like a big blur. By the time we got through with that, it was time for us to go home on 30-day leave. Yeah, after infantry training, we were ready to take a leave. A leave is when the Marine Corps gives you 30 days a year to go home and to, rest and see mama and daddy and all that. And I arrived in Baton Rouge aboard a plane I'd taken from Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina airport, and it landed in New Orleans, and then I hitchhiked all the way to Baton Rouge. And I was in my tropicals, and I walked outside the airport there in New Orleans. It's about a 90-mile trip to Baton Rouge, and I stuck my thumb out in Airline Highway, and the first car that came by stopped and picked me up. And you know why? Because we were in our uniform, and they knew I was a Marine, and they wanted to do whatever they could do for some Marine. And that man talked to me all the way to Baton Rouge, wanting to know what all I had to do in boot camp. But anyway, I got home, and then I got a cab to my house. And when I arrived at home, my mother and my daddy couldn't even recognize me. Not only was I bronzed from marching at Parris Island every day, but not only was I different on the outside, but I was different on the inside. And they were in awe of how I had changed in about 12 weeks. And that's the way the Marine Corps is. If you ever want to send a son off to military or something, I would say let him join the Marine Corps. Anyway, I was going back after 30-day leave and to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. I was there for about 4 or 5 months. Sergeant wanted to know if I wanted to go to Camp Pendleton. My daddy being in the Marine Corps in World War II, he was at 1st Marine Division on the California coast. So I said yes indeed. So they gave me orders to Camp Pendleton. I arrived at Camp Pendleton, and it was when the Beatles were out. I didn't even know about a Beatle. I walked into the barracks at Camp Pendleton, and some Marine had his radio on, and it was, "I Want to Hold Your Hand." And I said, who is that? And some Marine said, "You don't know who that is? That's the Beatles. That was their first song out. I Want to Hold Your Hand." Here I wasn't in boot camp anymore. I had a regular job from like 8 to 4:30 every day. I had a barracks and a bed to sleep in, and I had all my Marine Corps buddies to be with. Finally, the first sergeant on Friday at 4:30, when everybody gets off for liberty and the rest of the weekend don't even have to come back till Monday morning, all of a sudden a Marine buddy of mine run into the barracks and said, "Grant, the first sergeant wants to see you right now." And I'm thinking, oh my God, what have I done? What have I done? This guy was like an emergency, because the first sergeant was getting off at 4:32. I went and knocked on the door. He said, "Come in." I walked in and he had an envelope of a record, Manila Records, in his hand. He said, Lance Corporal Slayton, I see here where you went to LSU. I said, yes, sir, I did. He said, do you know how to type? I dropped my head and I said, no, I don't know how to type. He didn't say one word. He reached in the drawer. He pulled out a typing book. He threw it in front of me and he looked at me and he said, you will be typing Monday morning. Do you understand? I said, yes, sir. He gave me the keys to the office. And I went in there that night and I opened that book up and I was pecking, hen pecking. Monday morning, the first sergeant came in. And there I was at 8 o'clock. He looked at me and he said, let me see what you got going here, Marine. This is a time for all good men to come to the aid of his country. He said, you're all right, but you'll get even better. He said, you're hired. You can be one of my typists. Now I have 2 typists and I'm going to be here with all of y'all. It was about 6 months later, he came to me and to my desk and he said, Corporal, I made Corporal then because I was working for First Sergeant then and they promoted me to Corporal. I was moving up in the Marine Corps. He said, Corporal Slayton, would you like to go to Okinawa? I said, you mean 3rd Marine Division, Okinawa? I've been to 1st Marine Division. Now I'm at 2nd Marine Division. Now you want to send me to 3rd Marine Division. I said, you know my daddy was in World War II on Okinawa. You know I want to go to Okinawa. He said, all right, Marine, Corporal Slayton, here's your orders. You can type up your own orders. Headquarters Marine Corps, Quantico, Virginia, Westpac, 3rd Marine Division, Corporal Slayton, transferred. I'm going to tell you, not everybody can type up their orders to Okinawa. And to me, that was a biggie because I enjoyed every bit of it. And within a month, I was aboard a ship heading for Pearl Harbor. We left San Diego. It was 3 days. We got to Pearl Harbor. We got to go in there, see what it was like at Pearl Harbor, because Pearl Harbor was in the news back in World War II. That's where the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. We went into Honolulu. We got aboard the ship the next day, and it was 10 days to Yokohama. We had all of our money changed into yen. Do you know how much yen we got for every dollar? 300 yen for every $1 bill. I had about $25 and I had enough yen, big wads of it. I put it in my top pocket here, put it here, had them in all 6 of my Marine Corps pockets. We went into Tokyo that night and we had a party, honey. We must have went to about 10 or 15 bars, stir fry, beer, everything you'd want. Then we had to come back to the ship. We got aboard the ship and we had a 2-day trip to Okinawa. Yes, I arrived at Okinawa and I was aboard the 6x trucks, me and the rest of the Marines that was going up north to Camp Hansen, the northernmost camp in Okinawa. I got to Camp Hansen, everything was perfect. Anyway, we was having a good time in Okinawa, and then all of a sudden, the sergeant says, all right, boys, get your jungle warfare stuff on, get your field transport pack, your 782 gear, your M14 rifle. We're going up to the northern training area, jungle warfare school. And when we heard jungle warfare school, that meant something was going on, and we didn't know exactly where we were headed, but we had to go up there and be up there for 30 days to learn jungle warfare. And we had heard the name Vietnam, but we didn't think, we didn't know that we was going to be going there for some reason later on. So anyway, we went to the jungle warfare school and we all passed it really good. And it was about a couple of weeks later, we were sleeping in the barracks. It was about 1:30 in the morning. All of a sudden, the lights came on in the barracks and the sergeant started screaming, get your sea bags, get your field transport pack, get your 782 gear and your M14 rifle and fall out on the roads. The trucks, the 6x's are coming to pick us up tonight. We're going to board 3 ships, an AKA, an APA, and an LST. It's 1:30 in the morning. And we already had everything packed. Our field transport pack was ready. Our sea bag was ready. We had our M14 rifle. We kept the same rifle for 4 years. I was in the Marine Corps 4 years. I carried that rifle everywhere I was stationed. Anyway, we got all that gear, and it wasn't 10, 15 minutes. We was outside waiting for those trucks, and there they came. They picked us up, and they brought us out to the beach, and it was about 2 in the morning, and we looked out there, and the pitch blew dark, and we could see 3 dark things out there. That was the ship. And so they had the little mike boats that would bring us out to the big boats. So there's about 30 of us Marines in this mike boat, and we're going out to our ship. The Navy guy, the helmsman that was running the mike boat, he knew where we was going, which ship we was going to. So we start going out there, and we pull up alongside that big old ship, and then we got out right by where they had a landing, and then we walked up 1 flight of stairs to the next landing, and then all of a sudden that door opened to that naval ship. That Navy man looked at us, said, "Welcome aboard, Marines. Put your sea bag right here, put your field transport pack right there, put your 782 gear right there, and your M14 right there, and we'll take care of them, and go down below because we got steak and eggs waiting for you." And we was hungry. We was talking while we was aboard that mike boat, saying, let's don't wake nobody up, because they think they're the best in the world. And we know we're the best in the world, and we don't want to start off on the wrong foot with these people. But when he told us we had steak and eggs waiting for us, boy, we like that. For the next 9 weeks, we floated in the South China Sea off of Vietnam for 9 weeks. We went to Hong Kong twice. You can't hem Marines and sailors up for over 2 or 3 weeks without having some kind of break. And we went to the Philippines once. And finally, March the 7th, 1965, the night before we landed in Vietnam the next day, the captain of all 3 ships came aboard the PA system and said, "Marines, your commander-in-chief from Washington, D.C., Lyndon Baines Johnson, LBJ, wants to talk to you from Washington. He's from Texas. My fellow American, you'll be going in tomorrow. It'll be the first time since Korea, amphibious landing. I wish you all the luck in the world." Wow. We've been floating for 9 weeks, and now tomorrow morning we're going to finally land. We was all very happy. We went down and got all the ammunition we could get for our M14 rifles. We had checked our field transport pack. We went to bed early that night, about 8 o'clock, because we knew there was going to be the Navy was going to be landing mike boats about 3 o'clock in the morning. So we got in our rack, and by the way, we had 9 racks high. That's how we stayed in those compartments aboard those troop transport. And to get to the 9th rack up at the top, you had to climb all the other racks. And when you're laying in the rack, you got about this much room for your nose. Has got about that much room where your other Marines on top of you. And you drop right off to sleep, because usually we were very tired, and we knew the next morning we was going to be expected to do a lot of energy. So anyway, sure enough, the lights came on at 3 o'clock, 3:30. The sergeant started yelling at us. We started getting ready. We got our uniforms, our jungle utilities on, our boots. We had special new jungle boots we had to put on. We had our M14 rifle, our field transport pack, our 782 gear, and we were ready. And sure enough, they started landing the mike boat on the side. It was just getting barely daylight, and the mike boat would come up alongside the ship, and there's a net, and you gotta go down this net slowly till that mike boat is going up and down like this, about 3 feet. And there was a little bit of a storm that morning, and you have to judge it, because you got this field transport pack, your M14 rifle slung over your shoulder, and you jump off when the mike boat comes up, and you don't break your legs. But anyway, we all got in the mike boat. We had 30 mike boats from all the ships. All of a sudden we got around, and we got in a big gigantic line. Everybody was together, just perfectly lined, about 200 yards from the beach. All of a sudden, the helmsman of all the Mike boat, the Navy guy that was running, hit that throttle. That Mike boat reared up in the front, and you can't see over the Mike boat, and they don't want you looking over the Mike boat because you're liable to get shot. So we didn't know what was going on at the beach. We hit that beach, that ramp went down just like at Iwo Jima with my daddy. We all ran off of there with our M14 rifle, field transport pack, and you're not going to believe what we met. There was 30 gorgeous South Vietnamese girls with jet black hair, with long white dresses all the way to the sand, with rice hats, and they had leis like in a wave, putting it over our helmets and over our necks. And ABC and NBC was filming the whole thing. The beach was already secure. They didn't even tell us that. But anyway, that's what we met. And we started looking at each other and said, wow, what is going on? We should have been here last month, man. You call this war? Well, guess what? They wanted us to get aboard them trucks immediately so they could bring us in there to the airstrip at Da Nang. And that's what we did. We all got aboard them 6x. There's about 300 of us Marines, went to the airstrip. But anyway, we went to the air base, and they wanted us to be there in case the Viet Cong or somebody was going to attack the air base. We Marines would be there. And then about a month or two later, they started sending us out to Hill 327, out into the jungle, out to where the Viet Cong were actually out there in the rice paddies and all that stuff. So anyway, that was my introduction to Vietnam. After I'd been there about a month or two, they needed expert riflemen, and I was an expert rifle. In fact, my last year in the Marine Corps, I shot the highest in the Marine Corps at Camp Pendleton that year that I got out, 1967. But anyway, they knew I was an expert rifleman, and I had good eyes. I could see in the dark. And anyway, they took me off of Hill 327 and put me down at the bomb depot and the ammo dump. And every night, at 6 o'clock, it was still daylight for a couple of hours, we would go into the foxholes at the perimeter of Da Nang, and right behind us was a gigantic depot for 1,000-pound bombs, 500-pound bombs that the F-4B Phantom jets used. Ammunition was back behind us, not even 10 or 12, 15 feet on the other side of this little hump of a levee that we had right behind us, and all of our foxholes was in front of that. And we knew that the Viet Cong and the NVA or whoever could do it that wanted to penetrate that perimeter, if they ever got in there, I mean, we ourselves would be toast. Can you imagine 1,000-pound bombs going off right behind us? So we were actually guarding this place not only for the Marine Corps and for the base at Da Nang, but we were guarding it for our own safety. And we had 2 Marines in every foxhole. They was about 50 yards apart. Had 50 yards to the right, 50 yards to the left. There'd be another foxhole with 2 Marines. And then about 100 yards to the left and 100 yards to the right, there would be a 50 caliber machine gun crew who would guard our flanks. If anybody ever tried to penetrate, they could turn those 50 calibers on them with the tracer rounds. And we'd get in there at 6 o'clock at night. Like I said, it wouldn't get dark till about 8, and then I would stand guard the first 4 hours. And my buddy would sleep, if he was sleepy, on the back, which is right behind me on the parapet. We had a poncho back there and had a kind of a little pillow, and you could sleep back there because you had to be you know, pretty much ready to go back on guard. When I got through with my 4 hours, I'd go back there and go to sleep while he got on the M14 rifle watching. Anyway, it was one night about 1:30 in the morning. Seems like everything happens to me about 1:30 in the morning. But anyway, I was on the M14 and I was standing in the foxhole, and my buddy was sleeping in the back. As I heard something hit out in front of our foxhole. I heard the noise of it. I didn't know what it was, so I got on my tippy toes looking over those sandbags, and I raised up so I could see exactly what was going on. And just about that time, a grenade went off about 10 feet in front of me. Now, what happened after it went off, the concussion of that grenade blew my helmet off and blew me back on top of my buddy, who was in a dead sleep. He heard the gigantic explosion of the grenade. Then he felt me on top of him. He thought maybe the enemy had got in that foxhole. But anyway, he went crazy. He got up and got on the BAR, Browning automatic rifle, which he had, which is like a machine gun. He got on there and started shooting like crazy. He was like in a daze. He thought that, oh my God. First he thought the enemy was in our foxhole when I fell on him. Anyway, I was on my M14 and he was wild crazy shooting with that BAR. And every fifth round is a tracer, which means it goes out. 4 rounds go out you can't see, but that tracer is red and you can see where it's going. And that's what he had. He had tracer rounds every fifth round. And he started getting them over there where the 50 calibers were. He wasn't shooting right. He was like in a dazed state and shooting crazy wild, and he started shooting at the 50 calibers. Well, they had seen the grenade go off. Then they seen these tracer rounds coming from our foxhole toward them. They thought maybe the enemy had come in, taken over the foxhole, and was shooting back at them. So they aimed those 50 calibers right at us. And the only thing that saved us is we got into the bottom of the foxhole, and those 50 calibers was knocking them sandbags like crazy. After about 2 minutes of that, we was buried, totally buried in sand. We just barely got out of the sand later on. They came to see what was wrong, and it was all a big mistake. But we had been attacked by that grenade that night, and somebody was wanting to get in there, and maybe they could have got in there, but they started a hell of a firefight. All right, I was up on 327 after that in the bomb depot, because that after about a month or two of that, it kind of wears you down, because it's pretty dangerous, because they would love to get into them bombs and blow the whole depot up, you know, and we knew if it bomb blew up right behind us, we'd probably be gone ourselves. So anyway, they moved me out to Hill 327. Now, all the hills in Vietnam were named from their elevation. So Hill 327 was north of Da Nang, about 4 or 5 miles. It was 327 feet of elevation. And me and Cavalier was put out there, kind of like a little listening post. We had a foxhole. And down below us was what we call Happy Valley. We named everything. The Marines named all these things. Yes, I was up on 327 there, and quite a few things happened that was kind of exciting for us Marines up there. One night, my buddy woke me up. I was sleeping on the back of the foxhole at the parapet. He said, "Grant, look at this." I said, "What's going on?" He said, "Look down there at the airstrip." It's at nighttime, about 1:30. Like I said, I'm always having something happen about 1:30 in the morning. What it was is the NVA had started firing rockets at the air base. And we had these $1 million planes, these F-4B Phantom jets. We had the F-101s and the F-102, which were Air Force jets. And they were all warplanes, and they were all in silos, which meant they was in the protected walls of these silos right off the airstrip where they took off, you know. Every day they could just roll right out, get on the runway and just take off. And here the NVA had these gigantic rockets coming in there, and they destroyed about 4 or 5 of those planes, which were worth millions of dollars. And the next day we happened to be able to go down there in the trucks. For some reason we said, hey, we'd like to go down there and see what happened. So anyway, I think I left Cavalier in the foxhole that day, and I went down there and looked, and they had about 5 of our airplanes. They didn't get any F-4B Phantom jet, but they got those Air Force planes. But anyway, that's what it was like in Vietnam. Sneak attacks. By the way, when those rockets took off, the Marines around there was able to find out where those rockets were coming from, and they threw some mortars in there on top of them, and they actually killed about 7 or 8 of those rocket men that were sending them rockets in there. But the Marines were right on that right away, and they weren't able to send any more rockets in there, that's for sure. And we didn't see another rocket for for the whole time I was there after that.